Hi, Scott.
Imogen, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
Excellent. I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Good.
Been looking forward to to the chat. See
Nice.
what happens.
Let's before we get into anything, I like to start all
Sure.
of my sessions with about 5 minutes of silence. If you want to join me on this.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. Don't mind the
Wise.
time.
Very wise. Okay.
Yes. Don't mind the time. I'll let you know. Okay. So how have you been since the retreat?
Good. I I watched a few of the transmissions on YouTube and was surprised to find I was getting blasted with energy from the videos. That's a
Yeah.
first. That was really surprising. Um, like, what the hell is going on? Right?
Yeah. Beyond
You
time
know,
and space.
yeah, I did a Shaktipat a couple of years ago, which was really powerful um, and helpful. Very visual. It was a very visual experience.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so this was, I guess. I guess I'm telling you my story here.
No,
Yeah,
this is good. This is the first, other than that short little interaction we had in the retreat, this is the
sure.
first time we're actually getting to
Yeah,
interact. And so for me, part of that is hearing what your story is and seeing
yeah,
where we can take that story forward, basically.
yeah. Okay, I'll be brief. For years I was just I worked a lot, drank a lot of booze, and had fun. Um, I heard about this thing called ayahuasca. I live in South America. I heard about
Mhm.
ayahuasca. I thought, gee, that'd be really nice to do it, but it's in Peru. I live in Chile. Then I discovered there was a shaman half a mile from my house.
Mm.
Really nice guy. I did it for 2 years, like a couple of times a month, and the shaman wasn't Peruvian. He's a Chilean guy who'd been to India and been to Sai Baba, Satya Sai Baba's temple, and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
my husband's been there, yeah.
Yeah, and so I started getting like visions of Sai Baba during ceremonies,
Hmm.
and then the experiences, which I mean, I was like, I didn't know what was going on, but I went from not knowing anything to being like really intrigued, like what is this stuff? And then like Kundalini type experiences,
Hmm.
during ceremonies, like just
Hmm.
explosions of energy. And so
Hmm.
that was cool. But then like after a couple of years, some things happened. The group I was with split up, and then I was also doing some other plant medicines. Like there was a lot of the Amazonian shamans use these other plants, which
Hmm.
are more powerful than ayahuasca, and
Hmm.
really open up your spiritual capability. So I heard this, but you don't really believe it. You're like, yeah, what? I'll take anything, whatever, so yeah, so they did. Anyway, about 8 years ago, probably, I was walking to work and I had an intrusion of some people might call it psychosis, I guess, right? It felt like some kind of psychosis event, So, um, but I was really switched on. I felt it coming in. I'm like, I don't know what this is. So instead of walking to work, I walked directly to the hospital and was like, give me
Hmm.
some medicine now.
Hmm.
So they gave me some stuff, and but I didn't want to take the medicine. I wanted to really manage it and try to learn because I didn't think it was psychosis. I thought it's spiritual awakening. Right, this is what's going
Hmm.
on. I've got to learn how to
Hmm.
deal with this.
Hmm.
So I kept the clonazepam for extreme emergencies and just tried to work with it. So this went on for a couple of years, during which I kept doing plant medicines because many people say that that's the way to balance out the energy. Is there's other plants. Yeah.
Right.
So basically I was entering into the spirit world. I was getting a lot of evocations of spirits, demons,
Mhm.
generally negative stuff, right?
Yeah.
Although, yeah, so it was negative for a couple of years. Eventually, I was asking my shaman, Julian, I was like, dude, what's going on? And we didn't really connect. And then after 2 years, he invited me over to his house. And we did this Kambo ceremony, which is like frog medicine. And during the
Mhm.
ceremony, he invoked Shiva.
Mhm.
And you could feel Shiva come into the room. And then after the ceremony, like my life had changed. It's just like I just felt energy all around my body. And
Mhm.
I was like, dude, what happened here? And he's like, oh, I don't know. It's Sai Baba. I don't know what happened. You know, I'm like, okay. Anyway, the next day I discovered energy and how to move energy. And
Mhm.
I started sensing my chakras and I'm like, what is going on? And I start like using my imagination to move energy around my body. I'm like, holy
Mhm.
crap, what is going on? 3 days later, I was working with energy out on the balcony here, and it just blew out my crown chakra.
Mhm.
And during that explosion, I seemed to go through a tunnel into the temple of Sai Baba in some spiritual world,
Mhm.
which was really crazy. And you know, nobody believes you, but you know, it happened. I know it happened. You know,
Yeah.
and so that changed everything. That ceremony with Julian really changed everything. And then suddenly I started finding the information I needed to learn how to balance energy. Because before
Yeah.
that, it was just lost.
Mhm.
So I did that for a couple of years. The energy feels really sexual. So I started thinking about it. Okay, maybe it's Tantra. Maybe this is like Tantra or something. So I started studying Tantra a little bit and
Mhm.
trying
Mhm.
to just independently, trying to learn how to work with it. And seemed to get really far with it. And I was having these amazing I basically learned how to evoke spirits, but not spirits because what happened is I came, I guess, what I discovered is like a lot of energy is, a lot of the pure energy seems to be covered with human emotions like shame and other problems, right?
I call
So,
it like a veil. It's like different veils, and
yeah,
some people, those veils are very like thick cloaks, like velvet, and other people, they're see-through. They're very transparent, and some
yeah,
people they're not so much there even.
I guess. So what happened is I was saying, okay, this energy sexual. So I'm focused, like I was never able to meditate on the breath until like the last couple
Mhm.
of years. I just didn't understand it. But then so what I was essentially doing was I would take like a sexual idea and use that as the meditation object. And I
Mhm.
just use that. And it would be like non-sexual. It was a purely mental process, but I'd use that to focus energy. And it was
Mhm.
completely magnetic. I mean, nothing, because you like thinking about it, it's easy. So you just boom,
Mhm.
complete and utter focus. So that was cool. Unfortunately, what would happen is from time to time, I would have intrusions like horrifying because of
Mhm.
the shame, because you're highly energized, but you've got these shame constructs or whatever. And so I
Mhm.
would like get demonic, vampiric, not all the time, just occasionally. And it would be like so stunningly realistic and
Mhm.
horrifying. So I was like, okay, I've got to do something different here because I'm obviously doing something wrong, you know, because I haven't heard I haven't heard Sai Baba talking about the vampires and demons, right? It's obviously related to me somehow, you know. So I had yeah, so I that was part of the reason I did that first Shaktipat was to try and figure out how to clean the energy, whatever I have to do to make sure I'm not related to this kind of energy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I did that, and I did it with this American guy, Chris Mitchell, who's controversial, I guess.
I've
But
never
I
heard
had
of
a
him.
really good experience with him, with Chris Mitchell. It was amazing.
Mhm.
He's had some accusations, I guess, from some woman and stuff, but my experience with him was completely ethical and amazing. And it was a
Mhm.
28-day Shaktipat. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Um, anyway, after that, I met another guy, and he was saying to me, "What you need to do, Scott, is change your meditations and just start focusing like on the Lotus Sutra and the heart." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Dude, that
Mhm.
sounds really boring, but I'll try it." So, so I tried it, and there was some prayers and stuff involved. And then, like about 2 years ago, my whole life deconstructed. My wife left me, and everything went to hell.
Mhm.
But you know, it was actually turned out for the better. I'm happy. Like it was fine. Thank God it
Yeah.
ended. And that's cool. Anyway, I didn't really think I needed, yeah, I wasn't really sure like I needed more Shaktipat to be honest with you, but that was a really good experience we just had. And the other thing is like I'm still I've still got some like legacy behaviors which are preventing me from advancing, I guess. And it's
Hmm.
clearly the ego is trying to screw me up here. Like
Hmm.
but I, like I've got this ability, and since the Shaktipat, I mean, I guess since that Shaktipat I had with Chris Mitchell, like I'm with Kundalini all day now. So
Hmm.
like I wake up, and like bands of energy around here.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's quite visionary. Generally, I feel normal. Generally,
Hmm.
things are
Hmm.
normal. Sometimes at night, quite visionary. Yeah, which sometimes is cool. Sometimes if you're in a spooky mood, is not so cool.
Hmm.
But I tend my big thing is I've got a YouTube channel, and my big thing is balancing the elements. That's what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like the whole thing. That's what I discovered was the way to avoid negative intrusions is have balanced energy. And so I
Hmm.
spend a lot of time meditating, like sometimes 2 or 3 hours a day, and I just meditate on the elements, on
Hmm.
the physical level, on the astral level, mental level, and then I tend to like move up. Depends. Like yesterday, I was doing this, and I moved up into the spirit world, and Ganesha came out, and that was really cool. So there was like a cool sort of movement into the spirit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but the whole non-duality thing.
I was about to say, yeah, there's an elephant in the room here talking about
There's
Ganesha.
another elephant in the room, right? There's another
Yeah,
elephant in the room. And the
yeah.
thing is that I'm not really sure how this works. I mean, the way I think it works is this, is I think the chakras, and I may be wrong here, but I think the chakras, even though it goes like from earth, water, fire, air, spirit, which seems to
Hmm.
represent the whole spectrum of the spiritual experience, I think this is all being, it's almost like, I don't want to use negative language here, but it seems like it's a projection from the heart chakra or something. It seems like there's something behind all of that, which is the
Yes,
non-dual experience, right?
yes. There you go. You got that. For me, the way I would describe the language I use is
Yeah,
all that you've been talking about up until this point is what
yeah,
I would call content, the
yeah,
form of life, the content of life, the clouds in the sky.
yeah,
The non-dual recognition is the sky itself, is the formless awareness, open consciousness from which all form arises within. And that includes all the human body, all the chakras, all the spiritual bodies, everything. All
yeah.
of that, in my view, is the form.
I
And
agree. Yeah,
so this is why you can keep tweaking the form. You can keep getting better in the form, more open, more balanced, more all of this stuff. But if you haven't yet discovered who you are in all of this, which is the primordial groundless ground, or the formless, you're just tweaking life. You're just
yeah,
tweaking the form. And so it's unsatisfactory in terms of it doesn't include everything. It doesn't place everything in its rightful. It's sort of putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
yeah. So yeah, so that's why I decided to do Shaktipat with you, the whole non-dual thing. And it's like I'm not. I get moments of this. Like sometimes if I'm out walking, I'll have moments of just like sort of transcendent awareness,
Hmm.
but then it goes
Hmm.
away. And my whole thing is that it's true that the form, the contents, um, is illusionary, but
Hmm.
so is this world in its own way.
Oh,
And
it's
it
all
seems
no, no, no. The world is the content too. There's no
right.
separation between those two things. It's
Yeah,
more content. And the thing is, we know we are consciousness, and we know consciousness through this form. And so
yeah,
that's why in the way I come at it is a both and approach rather than an either or approach.
yeah,
So it's not to ignore this world and the body form and all of the content. It's So you do that work, but you all the while have to, it's like a nested thing. It's like, this is the content nested within the you, the formless you.
Yeah.
And so it's both, and you otherwise it's this disconnect. There's this subtle duality there.
Yeah.
Even if you're experiencing the formless yourself, there's an in and outness, which is what you've experienced. There's
Yeah.
an either or sensation going on.
Yeah. Well, my point actually was, it was just to say that my experiences with evil or the horrific side of things were also super realistic. And so,
Yeah.
like as a human in this world, speaking from the dual
Yeah.
perspective of Scott, I just want
Yep.
to make sure that 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 can never, I got to categorically make sure that that is never, because I mean, this is the thing, like I was talking to my mother the other day, and I was like, I was doing this non-dual Shaktipat, and she's all worried, like, oh, why are you doing more spiritual work? Didn't you already do this? And I'm like, listen, I'm like, I'm just worried because who knows what happens when you die, but I've seen things that I don't ever want to see again. And I just want to make sure that I've got, because it comes down to conscious awareness, really, and being able, and if you see horrific things, knowing that, hey, I'm cool. I'm like, you can say it's
Yeah.
content,
Yeah.
right?
So this is the thing. When you are so well grounded in the
Yeah,
self, in that formless awareness, that open awareness, these things seem, it's a bit like a white sheet with a speck of dust on it, and it's like, oh, I see that so clearly, it's a speck of dust.
yeah,
Otherwise, if you haven't yet established that you're the white sheet here, you're the substrate, the
yeah,
substratum of life, those things take up all the air. But actually, when you recognize the vastness of the self, um, they're minute in comparison. I was speaking to another person yesterday who also was having some issues with these entities, and I'm like, these things cease to be an issue once you. This is why people like Sai Baba and all these other people don't talk about this so much,
yeah,
because that stuff seems so insignificant in
yeah,
in comparison. It's a bit like when you realize, oh, it's a thought. That thought seems suddenly has no power, but when you really live in your thoughts and you don't see that it's a thought, it
yeah.
seems like there's all there is
Hmm.
that belief in that thought. But so it's not about getting rid of any of this stuff. It's
Yeah,
about broadening out the perspective to such an extent, and deepening into yourself to such extent that the little wave on the ocean seems insignificant compared to the entirety of the ocean.
that's what I'm talking
That's
about.
that's what I'm
That's
talking about too.
that's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm here. Is like, I just want to make sure, and like whatever. I mean, I don't know, like, um, yeah, it's interesting the intensity of this transmission technology,
Mhm.
because you can meditate and meditate and meditate, and I've like, I seem to have accomplished something with meditation because I
Yeah,
was able to find that, because I was able to find out how to have a razor focus, and I
yeah.
learned a lot about meditation. It's been really useful, but transmission just seems like it just,
Yeah, I mean, think of it like breadcrumbs, like I'm laying down breadcrumbs because I know the way a little bit, like I'm experiencing it myself. So it's easier for you, or a tune, you can tune into that because it's already playing while you're doing all the work yourself through meditation, and it's totally possible. I'm not
yeah,
giving you anything that you don't already have.
sure,
It's just, it's so unseen, it's so covered over with these veils of the personhood and the
yeah,
content, that it's so unseen. And so all that's happening is because it's so well kind of seen in me. Let's use that language. Not quite accurate, but it's a good enough. It's so well seen in me. It's like you're able to tune into that yourself when you're around me or around that energy. It's not even me personally.
yeah,
It's actually nothing to do with me personally, because I'm just as much as a human in this form as well. But
sure,
it's that's why I call it divine light transmission, because it's not about Imogen the person here. It's that formless, pure energy of light, of awareness, that has no content to it. it's even, to me, it's light beyond light. It's energy beyond energy. All these ideas of energy and these forms of energy, these traditional, even Kundalini, is
Yeah.
still, it's still on the content level somehow. It can be. It's felt through the content level.
Yeah.
And so,
I think of it
yeah.
sometimes like the Kundalini represents the pure consciousness of Shakti, which is like
Hmm.
represented as energy.
Yeah.
And then the non-dual aspect is almost like entering into Shiva, which has got absolutely no content. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I think about it sometimes.
Well,
Um,
Shiva and Shakti are two sides of the same coin. You know,
yeah, sure.
the Shiva is the silent aspect and the Shakti is the dynamic aspect. And
Yeah,
so they are the fruition of each other. They like in the same way the formless is within the form, and the form is within the formless.
yeah.
It's they're
So the
not
non-dual
actually
is just
separate.
a little bit outside of that then. The non-dual would just be, I mean, I think it's true
Well, the
then. Like,
non-dual, and the non-dual is the not two of those two things.
okay, okay. That's easy to understand, right? Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's cool. It's cool.
So it's the non-dual is the recognition of the Shiva is that silent awareness, and all form comes from that, and they're not two separate things, and
No,
yet they appear as the duality appears within the non-duality, the form appears within the formless.
yeah. Um,
As the wave appears within the ocean, it's like it's the
right.
ocean and the form comes up within it and it goes back into it, but it's not separate to it. It's the wave, although we can describe the wave and say it's a wave, it's not separate to the ocean.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm getting energy from you already. I'm just getting it right. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. Um, do you find that like you sort of emanate energy, like just, I don't know about you, like when I talk about this stuff, it just starts building
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
right? It's like
I
it's
would say it's not building up, it's being uncovered. That's how I would describe it. Is it's actually it's always there. It's just it's covered over. We don't see it, we don't feel it, we're not in tune with it, we're not in touch with it. And
yeah,
so it's present actually. It's just whether the awareness is tuned into that.
right. And then like when you talk about it, you become aware of it, right?
Exactly. That's why one of the things I say all the time is the seeing is the doing. You don't, it's not about doing something in terms of like doing is fine to happen, but the most powerful thing is seeing it. And that is all the doing that is actually necessary in many ways.
I was reading about you and like you'd had like a transmission which changed your life, I guess, you and your
Hmm.
husband.
Hmm.
And was that like that transmission? That was like it was just becoming aware of the formless. Was that it? Just that
Yeah, I
idea?
mean, the transmission was, I was taught to give that transmission, and what I give now is it's evolved quite substantially, but it is the same root there.
Yeah,
Um, so the transmission, I actually, because I'd never had a transmission before, I'd never had any access to
yeah,
Kundalini. I'd lived with masters, I'd sat with masters, and so I felt what I would call as presence, which is actually the same thing, but that's how I conceived of it.
yeah,
But I'd never had any actual, I came from a much more sort of non-dual Advaita meditation, transcendental, much more
yeah.
dry path
Hmm.
rather than all the experiential tantra energy, all
Yeah.
of that. So I had no knowledge of all of that.
Wow.
So when I had my transmission, I didn't feel anything
Really?
because I wasn't tuned into it at all.
How interesting.
So I
How
had this transmission and I didn't like the guy at all.
right?
Brash American, sounded like a snake oil salesman.
Right.
Um, and I had this transmission, and it was late at night in the UK at the time, and I went to sleep. And the next morning I woke up, and my husband had had his 6 months prior and had this awakening, and it changed everything for him. And he was the one that noticed a difference in me. So at this point, I was not in touch with the energy stuff. I'd had this awakening, but it was an awakening, I would say, to my non-dual nature. There was this light airiness of no veils over covering anymore, but I
Wow.
wasn't really tuned into the energy side of it yet. And it actually took a couple of years to really that stuff to come online for me.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
And it still is. I would argue it's still changing and shifting. It's not, I'm not at a, I wouldn't say I'm done, put it that way,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of the energy capabilities there.
Yeah, but I mean, you clearly are transmitting energy. I mean, it's palpable. So it's
Yeah. But even that's changed from, I would say, 3 months ago. Even was it's
yeah,
different. So for me, it's changing all the time. I don't know where it goes. I don't know where this goes. I don't know where this story ends.
right.
I don't really
Yeah,
care. But I'm just saying, it's that side of it is not like a done deal, like a stamp. Okay, you're done,
sure.
and that's it.
That's interesting though. So I think this happens to a lot of people. Like they do transmissions and they don't feel anything.
Yes.
Um, I know that happened with Chris Mitchell. Like I was having these massive experiences, like of like visions and
Hmm.
diamonds in
Hmm.
my heart, and then
Hmm.
other people in the group were like, "I don't feel anything." I'm like,
Yeah.
"How can you not feel anything?" It's just so unbelievable.
Yeah, and in every session that I do, I have those people who feel lots, and I have those people who have come to dozens of sessions and do not feel a single thing. And for them, it's quite hard, because
Yeah,
if you're feeling stuff, it's very easy to say, "Oh, well, something's happening." It's very
yeah,
easy to see that. But that's why I say I'm not interested in experiences here, because actually
yeah,
that stuff is more experiences.
yeah. Right.
All
Yeah,
of this, that's just the steam that's coming off the top.
yeah,
That is should not be the focus. And of course it helps, because then it makes you feel like something's happening, but actually
yeah.
it's a bit of a red herring. It's a little bit of a something rustling in the bushes, and it's actually not, it's not important, I would say.
Okay. Yeah,
um, at the same time, if that's your path, that's your path, and that's totally fine.
yeah,
But that's not awakening. That is an energetic awakening, and that's it's a content, it's seeing life in a different form, let's say.
yeah, yeah,
But what we're talking about is recognizing who and what we are in all of this, the substrate of all of it, which is
yeah,
why it doesn't matter what experiences or what content you're experiencing. If you haven't recognized that and grokked that, experientially know that, all of these experiences really don't matter. They only just get you more experiences, different kinds
yeah,
of experiences.
yeah. Well, I think that the whole non-dual thing seems to be the way to go, just generally. And I did actually I had another experience.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, I went to Peru um, to work with a shaman. I know this woman, she's Italian, and I ended up getting stuck there because of the COVID thing for 4 months, which was interesting. But and I did medicine and stuff, and that was cool. But the big thing that happened in Peru wasn't doing any of the medicines or whatever. What happened is I was doing a lot of reading of Nisargadatta, and
Mm-hmm.
going through all
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
Nisargadatta books. And I had this feeling, that I was going to have some big awakening in Peru, but like nothing really happened. But I eventually got back to Lima, and I was waiting in Lima for a flight. And I was perusing some Adyashanti stuff, and I found a pirated video of his, which was all about his interpretation of Nisargadatta. And so
Oh,
I watched his interpretation. I was like, this is really interesting. And he was saying there's a way of thinking about I am. And he was saying it's almost like a trick you use. You think I am, and then you move your mind before the I.
yes,
It was
yes.
almost like using grammar, but thinking about this. So I was watching this video, and I'm like, what? I think I'll just try that. It was late at night, and I just lay down in bed, and I thought, okay, I am, and I just tried to move back, and I had an instant Kundalini explosion. It was like
Mm-hmm.
this, the whole energy went up the spine. Krishna came
Mm-hmm.
into the room. I could hear flutes and whistles and bells, and I'm like, why? That was like unbelievable.
You see,
And
actually, that's distracting. In that moment, all of that stuff happening was distracting from the actual thing that was really happening.
look at that, right?
So, and
Now
I'll tell
that's
you, yeah. So,
that's
what was
interesting.
actually happening was you were in that moment, you were recognizing that I am aware. Before the
Yeah.
I am aware. Now, all this content, Krishna, Kundalini, energies is coming up. And had you been able to stabilize in that recognition of I am aware of all of this,
Yeah.
that is the non-dual thing. Now, of course, we're habituated and trained to look to the content suddenly. And
Sure.
you lose that perspective, that groundless perspective of, oh, this is all happening within me.
Yeah.
Awareness me, not Scott me, not the
Sure.
body me, but awareness me. And
Yep.
so that's that. It's like, it's almost like a little test. I mean, it's not literally someone giving you a test, but it's a little
Yep.
test of life. It's like, you know, like we are so habituated to the content that we miss the subject in all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting. That's an interesting interpretation. Um, and obviously that was, it was actually, the thing is it's a great story. It was a really powerful experience, but it doesn't correspond to anything Nisargadatta talks about, right? Like, and it was the
He's
classic thing.
focused entirely on the awareness, you see.
Yeah. I mean, I literally was like, this flute music came through this, it was coming through through my neck. And then I had this vision like, oh my God, I am the flute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the flute that Krishna is playing. That's the
Mm-hmm.
chakras. The chakras are the holes in the flute, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
being played. And I was like, oh my God. But that's actually not like Nisargadatta would laugh at this. Like,
Well, you see
you're like,
that is still identifying with the
yeah,
content still,
right.
like the and even because actually Krishna, the flute, the chakras, the energy, the I am, all of that is with arising within you. And if you
Yeah,
fail to see that experientially, then the story just carries on, a different chapter. Okay, now we have a
right.
flute playing. Okay, a different chapter. Now we have this happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Wow.
actually, that awareness, as we're speaking right now, you can tune into that. The fact that, like, so people miss it. It's so ordinary. Awakening, actually, all of these exciting experiences, awakening is actually incredibly ordinary and mundane. And so
Yeah,
we completely ignore it. We completely devaluize it. What's that word? Anyway, we don't value it
yeah,
because what is being pointed to is in your experience right now, that which is looking out of these eyes and hearing this voice and experiencing this energy, that is awareness.
yeah.
That is consciousness.
That's it. It's
And
just
it's
trying to
here
eliminate.
always. We cannot lose it. We cannot not have it. We just are either aware of it or not.
Yeah,
And the awakening is the loss of the doubt that says I'm not that.
yeah. Right.
And then it's like you're not identified with any of the content anymore. All of that is arising within you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what the whole, I mean, like if all of Nisargadatta's books all just said the same thing. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that. I'm not that. It's
Yeah,
just stop thinking it. Just come back to the, because I
yeah.
guess his guru just told him one thing: don't
And
believe anything.
actually, yeah, and actually, you see, from my perspective, once you recognize that, all else falls into place.
Yeah,
Which is why having the focus on that recognition is so vital. But
yeah,
once you've had that recognition, then you have to bring all the content back in. Then you have to find the content has to find its rightful place at that point.
yeah,
Then you've put the horse first and the cart second. The cart
yeah,
is the content. So this is why it's very important to have that establishment of that recognition, but it's not the end of the story. He's speaking to those that haven't yet established that. Now,
yeah,
once you've established that, now we deal with the rest of the content. Now we include everything back in. I
right.
like to do it both and at once, actually. That's the way I find is to
Yeah,
be more stabilizing and integrative, because it actually doesn't separate these two things out.
yep,
It's a temporary separation, and it's a false separation, but
yep,
it's the transcendence. He's talking only about the transcendence. I'm talking about the transcendence and the inclusion all at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah,
But without the element of transcendence in there, the recognition of the ground in there, the inclusion is actually picking through a load of garbage.
Yeah. When you had your transmission, how long did it take you to go from the transmission to actually becoming quite aware yourself of this ground beyond the ground thing?
Well, like I said, I went to sleep. I think it was immediate, but the implications took many months and years to come
Yeah.
into, and it still is. I think, it's like time allows you to experience life so fully that it integrates that the implications of that seeing into everything.
Yeah.
So it was, I would say,
Oh,
something shifted immediately. Sorry, go on.
you said the implications of seeing into everything. So is that what do you mean by that? If you don't
What
mind me asking.
that language is not great.
Okay.
That I used. I'm not great with language. You have to sometimes hear beneath what I'm saying. um, so what I'm trying to point to is that so when you see something, when you've grokked something, when you've understood something, and I don't mean intellectually, I mean experientially,
Yeah.
the implications of that take time to fully unwind.
Yeah.
The implications of the oh, and that's how it is compared to that, oh, that's what that means, all of that sort of stuff. That's what takes time.
Yeah.
So I would say what happened fairly immediately, although I was asleep, so I don't know literally how immediately, but I
Yeah.
can only assume it was immediately, was that it was the dropping of the identification with me as Imogen, and me the thoughts, me the content,
Yeah.
and then it's not really identification, but the rightful recognition of who and what I was as awareness happened.
Yeah.
So it's like this spaciousness, is this non-content recognition.
I'm interested too, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but like because the whole idea, like it's spaciousness, it's non-content, yet the transmission's energetic, or is it? Or is it, maybe it's not energetic? I sense it as energy, but maybe.
Yeah, I think the transmission absolutely is energetic,
Yeah.
but I think that's the steam off the top somehow.
Okay. Yeah.
uh it's pointing to, it's almost like, I don't know, you see, this is why having an interview with you is slightly troubling for me, because I'm not good at talking about this stuff. So I feel like
Oh,
it's tricky. It's because
oh no, no, no. Yeah.
we're talking about something that is beyond words. So it's actually
Yeah.
trying to talk about it in words makes it seem like it's a thing that we're talking about, and actually we're
It's
talking
not.
about
Yeah.
the subject prior to the thing of life. So let me try and describe this. I think there's a few different things going on with the transmission. The energetic side of it is almost like the burning off. It's like the morning mist. You got the morning mist, and the sun burns off the morning mist to
Yep.
reveal the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the energetics of it is something akin to that, in that it's burning off those layers, and those, it's parting the mist, or revealing the mist to see the ground underneath.
Yep.
So the it's revealing what you already were but didn't recognize you were.
Okay. Yep.
So that's what I think the energy is doing, is it's burning off that the non-seeing of your nature. It's not adding your nature to you. It's not suddenly giving you a new nature.
Yeah.
You already were that. You already were that formless awareness. You just
Yep.
didn't recognize it because of all the content, all the mist covering that.
I got another question. Is like, I'm sorry to keep asking questions. I'm just
No,
interested
it's
in.
fine. It's fine.
It also just helps my understanding of stuff. Like after you received that transmission, you said that you really weren't involved with like energy stuff at all previously. But
No.
like how long afterwards did you start becoming aware of that kind of stuff, or did you? I don't know.
Um, So along the timeline of my particular thing was then I had about 2 years of hell that I went through, where I had to see, I wasn't aware. No one had taught me to tune into that energy. That energy was happening, but no one had taught me how to. So all the focus was on the mind stuff and the body stuff rather than the energetic stuff. So I was dealing with my psychology. I was dealing with my crappy conditioning and my trauma of childhood and all of the rest of the ancestral crap that had been sort of there and I'd been avoiding. So now there was no ability of resistance or avoiding there, because I was the space and I was the formless awareness that contained it all. So suddenly everything was coming up within me. And I don't think that the energy wasn't there. It's just when you're trained to look at a particular thing, you miss everything else. So I was trained to look at a particular set of experiences and circumstances. So that's where all my attention went. And all this other stuff that was happening, probably there just as much, was just not, I was blind to it because it wasn't as loud as all the other stuff for me, because I wasn't habituated towards it.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I had 2 years of all this crappy wading through minestrone soup of conditioning.
Yep.
And once that had kind of unwound itself enough, then I had to deal with, I had quite a sick body because of all of this, of all the stuff I'd been avoiding and then now dealing with. So then the body stuff started to happen. And then I got the opportunity from the person who had given me that transmission to learn how to give transmission. So this is when I would say my adventures into energy work really started to ramp up. Now, you say that you feel a transmission from me. When you're with other teachers, people who are awakened, most people feel that, I would call it presence, that energy.
It depends. Like, I've had experiences, like if I talk to Chris Mitchell, generally I don't feel energy from him, but then all of a sudden I'll get massive downloads of information which are scary in their depth. I'm like, okay, there's something going on. It depends. Like if I listen to like Aja Shanti or something, I don't feel energy, but I feel the presence, but it's not energy. It's like a different thing.
Yeah, it is a slightly different thing. I think I don't quite understand what the difference is between them, but there is a difference. But I think it is form. It is the same thing, actually.
I was thinking about this because I think last year somebody sent me one of your videos and I was like, yeah, I don't feel anything, whatever. But I think what happened is like once you actually sit with you and like tune in, like it's almost like once you get the sort, I'm just guessing here, but once you sort of tune into the vibration, then you're sort of, then like I literally just watched your video yesterday and it's like boom, instant, and it feels awesome. I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is great, and you did it on YouTube. I didn't even know you had a transmission. I got an email from YouTube. I'm like, oh great. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, basking in.
I do them. I do them every Wednesday evenings. They're slightly different transmission, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same energy, obviously, but the focus for me is different. So
okay. Well, I was going to ask you that too.
It's global rather than on the individual.
Yeah, so you sort of can, I guess I'm just guessing here, but like you've already answered the question. So there is like a different focus based on the individual or a group or whatever, yeah. And and you can attenuate that power or whatever, like the energy. Like if you're giving energy to a group of people, well, I guess it's not your energy, so it's like whatever. It's like universal energies, whatever, right? All you're doing is
it's not any more taxing, if that's what you mean. It's not. It's not.
right. It's like,
No, it's not. So just to go back to the completion of the story about where it changed for me in terms of the energy. So he taught me how to give this transmission, this particular transmission, and then we had a falling out with him. But at that point, the transmission had already started to shift and change, and the energy in me it was like I'd tuned into, I'd learned how to tune into that aspect of life.
Yeah.
And so it's been growing and shifting and changing and going its own way now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I noticed also that, like, I mentioned this before, I think, is that, like, when you're doing, it's actually interesting because I was watching some of your old videos, but like you do when you're doing the transmission, it's almost like, I mean, you're almost like pushing the energy out from the heart area, right?
Yeah, so that's a recent thing actually. See, again, it guides, it's sort of like the energy itself guides me how it needs to change and move.
Okay, yeah.
And we'll see. I feel like there's potentially another big change coming. I can feel it, but it's sort of in the peripheral of my awareness rather than current, let's say. But yeah, so it changed. It used to just come from the top down, the energy.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And now it comes both from the top down and through this physical form as well. It didn't used to come through my physical form at all. It was almost like I was like guiding it as it was
Yeah.
coming down. But now it's not. I don't have to do that anymore. It guides itself, and it's a slightly different way of doing it.
Now, does
Apparently.
that come down? Is that coming down all the time, and then you just tune into it, and then you're sort of guiding it, or is it just when
Yeah,
you put?
it intensifies. It's I mean, it's everywhere all the time, but
Yeah.
when you it intensifies. There's certain things that I can do that it sort of intensifies. It sort of what collects, let's say.
Yeah. It's so interesting. You know, it's like, because I have a lot of energy experiences myself. And at one point, I noticed in one of your older videos, you were moving your hands like this. And
Hmm.
when I went into Sai Baba's temple that day, I was playing with this idea of just like waving my hands like over my chakras. And it
Hmm.
was like exploding. And I'm like, what is going on? Why does this work? This is like totally stupid, you know? But it seems to like sculpt, I
Yeah.
don't know, or the coalescence of the energy. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, yeah. And eventually, you see, what I'm noticing in myself and the transmissions now, it's becoming less about the chakra. It used to be all about opening up the chakras. And it's
yeah,
funny, I think there's new things coming online as the population, this world becomes able to handle these different energies. I see it's changing, and I see the need for the transmission is changing, and how it's needed as well. So,
yeah,
for instance, couple of years ago, it was very much about very hard to open up people's chakras. It was a lot of emphasis. The energy, first of all, it was all about the crown chakra. Then it was about all of the chakras opening up
yeah.
these chakras. Now I actually find that I don't need to do that. It's like just it happens automatically somewhat.
That's really interesting. You know,
And
part
so
of the reason,
now it's not even needing to go through the system. It's almost like everyone's becoming just this column of energy now rather than needing it to go through the chakras
interesting.
particularly.
You know, this is part of the reason why I'm like doing this too. Is like I was for the rest of the last year or two, like I've been thinking about this, like, because you know, one of the things that happened is like after like you know, my whole life changed. And like, I do like computer graphics and stuff for a living. I teach in university and stuff, but it's like, I just lost my interest, you know, and I still do it, I still do it, but it's like, it takes so much study to keep up with it. And I'm just like, I just can't be bothered, you know? And so it's
Yeah.
like, part of it is like trying to decide, okay, well, and what is my role in this world? You know, like, I mean, is it really to be an artist? Like, and I'm not a natural artist, you know, it's just something I got into. And like, so it's not like I've got an emotional connection to it, but it's like, well, you know, what am I supposed to do? And like, literally spend hours, like not so much lately, but one time I was doing 2 or 3 hours of meditation, just moving in and out of energy and figuring out how it works and stuff. And then hours and hours of reading, trying to like build up like a sort of mental framework of what's happening. And then I was thinking, like, you know, probably the best thing I can do with my time is just try and, especially like the way the world is so screwed up in various ways, is just like try and teach people like how to open up spiritually, because it's so unsatisfactory, like
Yeah.
the contents which we're offered is so unsatisfactory for most people, and they don't even realize it,
Yeah,
And so
you're
I
just
was,
moving around more content and thinking you're getting better content and worse content. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like I seem to connect with people on some level. My YouTube channel is really small, but like people like connect with me for some reason, like the people who like. So that's what I've been thinking, like, is how can I do this and like bring this to like a better, like a, because it has been sort of centered around me for a long time. Like, okay, what's
Mhm.
my experience?
Yeah.
Like, Scott, right? And it's like, and like I can feel the energy, like I know it, but it's like this whole idea of like, I don't know. I want to be able to like help people this way, kind of like my shaman did to me. He awakened me over
Yeah.
3 or 4 years.
So this is the thing. In order to help, so I get a lot of people who want to help other people because I think it's a
Yeah,
natural thing, actually.
yeah,
For me, this is why I say it's a bit like getting on an airplane. They tell you to put the face mask on yourself first before you can help anyone else.
yeah,
This is why we have to do the work ourselves before we can go out there and help another, because
yeah,
otherwise we're only helping another to our level.
yeah. Right.
That's it. You're only being able to explain and show and be with someone and help someone to the point that you are at.
Yeah.
So for me, the best thing that any individual can do for the world is to do the work yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And the emanation of that is the ability to help others with that.
Okay. I feel better then. That's good. I've been totally focused on myself.
You have to be. The way, so there's this sort of observation I've seen, like most people are always outward looking, the content. I want more cars, I want better houses, I want outward looking. And then at some point, that journey, the spiritual spark sparks, and that journey starts to look inward, right? And that can happen for quite a time. When that journey of that inward thing, the recognition of self has happened, and that abidance is, then the journey starts to go outward again.
Yeah.
But this time, that outward journey is still grounded in that self. And so you don't lose touch with the self in that outward journey. It becomes, the outward journey is the self then as well. All others are recognized as the self at that point.
That's the trick. Yeah. So you're not actually transmitting energy to other people. It's
No,
just
not at all.
it's just connecting with the self
It
is
is.
the
I see
trick.
you, I look at you, and it's you're me. You're me. There's the love that I have for you is the love that I have for me. There is no separation there. There is no difference there. So if you're hurting, I'm hurting. If I'm hurting, you're hurting. It's like there's no, this is why I think the Buddha talks about bodhisattvas, those that are like, as long as there is suffering on this earth, they have a job to do.
Yeah.
So, and that you can only realize that when you realize who and what you are in this world. And the fact that all of this world is you, is aspects of the self, not a connection, not two things connecting. Most people in spirituality talk about two things connecting. In fact, it came up on that Sunday, the last Sunday of the retreat, someone was talking about connection. And I'm like, it's not connection. It's the form arising within the formless. You are the formless. It's
Yeah.
not connection. They're not separate.
Yep.
So this walls, this computer, this you, all of this is arising within awareness as form. It's not
Yeah. Yeah.
separate to that awareness though.
Yeah. Right. It's crazy to wrap your head around that when
Yeah,
it's
well, that's why you can't, because the mind is a form within the formless. And so
right.
that's why the mind has limits. It's like got its box that it can handle this, and we can expand that out a little bit. Some people can expand it out quite a lot, but it's still only ever, this is why I hate words in some ways, because it's
Yep.
only ever a partial concept of the experience. It doesn't ever capture it all. Only silence does that.
Yeah. Silence.
It's the highest teaching.
Right. It's difficult for beginners to get into it, because
Absolutely. Which is why you don't speak to that. You know,
Right.
like the way I talk about it is I teach. I don't like that word because I don't feel like I'm actually teaching anything. I'm just talking about experience.
Sure.
But I teach to different levels. You know, there are truths that are true on one level, on the relative level, but actually you go deeper and they are transcended. But you have
Yeah.
to include all of them. They have their place. It's like doership, for instance. Sometimes you have to tell someone to go and do a practice.
Yeah.
But the true truth of that is there was no one ever doing it. It's just a happening. There is
Yeah.
no practice, there's no doer, it's just doing. And so you teach to someone who feels like they're a doer, a person, a thing. You go, okay, go and sit your butt down and do this thing.
Right.
But this thing gives right when you do it enough, the recognition comes about of, oh, I never was doing it. There was no person doing it. It was just the grace of consciousness, the grace of life moving in that way that gave rise to that feeling of, I need to do this.
That's interesting. Okay. That's an interesting way of thinking about that. I like that.
I
Huh.
don't, you see, I don't think there's any free will. I think there's free will, the appearance of free will nested in the
Yeah.
complete non-free will of life.
Right.
And there's not some big
Exactly.
creator in the sky either, some cosmic free will. There's no free will,
Yeah.
but there is the appearance of free will.
Yeah.
And so there, sometimes you speak to that appearance, and that's totally fine. If you see how it all nests within each other, it's fine. You can talk to these levels, no problem.
Nice. Hmm. This is it's a good chat. It's a good chat. This is good. Right. It's very interesting. Um, so so if I want to become more conscious of the non-jewel, let's
Mhm.
call it,
Yep.
um, there's practices, there's the doership I can use to help me do that. But
Yeah,
the
that's a big one. That is a big one. The record. So for me, any practice that will really take root, that recognition of the non-duality, is to do with seeing. So it's about letting go of any ideas you have of life
yeah,
and actually just observing what is happening.
yeah,
So that doership thing, the observation of, okay, I think I'm a doer, I think I'm doing, well, what is actually going on here? Can I take a look? Now, the bit that is missing in that is, who is the one that is taking a look?
right,
That, that is the critical bit. So you have to lose your fascination somewhat, even just temporarily, lose your fascination with the content,
yeah,
even the energetic content, even all of that.
yeah,
It's like, okay, put that into a box, that's content. And have instead the awareness not on the content, but on the fact that you are aware of that content.
yeah, and just keep returning to that,
Yeah.
returning to that.
I would call it, like, as a nice pithy little, I don't give out techniques, but as a pithy, as most technique as I'll give out, is a notice and return. It's very simple to remember.
Sure.
You notice that you're getting caught in the content, you return back to the awareness of the content. You
Yeah,
don't beat yourself up about the fact that I've spent a whole day caught in content, because that's more content. Beating yourself up, more content.
yeah,
So you just innocently and gently and quickly return back to, I'm aware of that content.
yeah, yeah. It's good.
It establishes it. And what it does, more importantly, is remove and dissolve the doubt around that. Because it's like, you have no doubt this is your hand. This is my hand, right? You don't, no one has to convince you it's your hand. You know it. The removal, that there's no doubt of it. So the removal of that doubt is based on the experience of this is my hand. So when you are enough established in that experience of awareness, there's no doubt about it. That awareness is primary to all of the content, because the content comes and goes, changes constantly.
Yeah. Hmm.
There's something that is stable here. There's something that has been here in my experience throughout time. And that is awareness. So
Yep.
if you're looking for stability in the content, you'll find yourself to suffer life. The
Yes.
non-suffering of life is in the recognition of, this is all content and its nature is to change. There is something here, the subject of this experience, which is, I'm aware.
So your transmission, energetic, but it helps grown someone, or maybe not, that's the wrong word, but it helps establish awareness of the.
Yeah. It's sort of, it's almost like we can remove the content, or we can see it's the content. We can see it's clouds, and we part the clouds and we go, oh, there's a sky here. Okay.
Yeah.
The sky was always there and holds all of the clouds within it. It's not a perfect analogy, but you get the gist.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's the trick then. The trick, not the trick, but like the opening of awareness through transmission seems like.
I mean that it's so you can do that without transmission. You can do that with a book. You can do that with meditation. You can do that in any number. We can do that walking in the woods, and suddenly awareness becomes, the background of awareness comes to the foreground, and you go, oh, there's awareness here, right? So it's not special to transmission, but what transmission does is it's sort of, because I'm so well established in that, it's like the breadcrumbs are easier for someone to feel that. It's almost like, I think I explained it in the retreat, it's like I'm singing a C note, and suddenly you can match, or you can feel that C note, and so then you can sing the C note. So it's the same. It's like I'm singing the note of awareness, and in that you're able to find it for yourself. So it makes it easier, I think. But it's not, it's certainly, I wouldn't ever say to anyone, oh, this is the only way, and this is, I'm like, no, that's not true. Anyone who tells you that there's one way of that is full of shit, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Yeah. For real.
Because it's our birthright. It's literally what we are all made of. So why would you say there's only one way to recognize that?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. So,
But it's, or it's a bit like, another analogy that's just coming up is a bit like, you have a guide that's walking up a mountain path. Now you can get up to the top of the mountain yourself. You can climb up the rock face and manage to get up to the top. But it's a bit like someone is standing at the top of the mountain and going, no, you just need to go a little bit left. You just need to, there's the path, it's the easy, this is where it needs to go. It's a bit like that.
Yeah. So I mean, if you can tweak my awareness of that a little bit, that would be much appreciated. Get some, I mean,
just having the transmissions, it does what it needs to do on many different levels, but that's the primary sort of reason for it, let's say. But it does other things as well. I've noticed these transmissions doing all sorts of weird and wonderful, wacky things, but primarily that's its purpose.
There was a girl last week, she was crying and crying. I was like, I felt so sorry for her, like, wow. But then afterwards, she was like happy about it. I'm like, okay, it's fine.
No, we were in contact behind the scenes, and it was some wonderful stuff coming up for her.
It's like, it's funny how it manifests like in different people.
It does. And this is why we cannot compare ourselves and we cannot judge another, because we are all going through and walking the path and the unfoldment of that path absolutely pristinely, perfectly for ourselves. As soon as you start to try and compare, you've lost your way in your way. Even anything I say to anyone, I'm like, don't just take what I say on face value. Use it to look at your experience. Otherwise, it's useless.
Well, everybody seems to have a different entry point into
Yeah.
Awareness.
Based on your own life conditioning, based on your own energetics, based on how consciousness is embodied in this form.
Right.
So yeah, we can't compare. Which is very frustrating to humans, because that's all we think we need to do. We have to, we look for an image of what we want, and we think we have to follow the steps to get there. This is much wilder. This is much more like there's no lines here. There's no boxes. There's no definition for that.
Yeah, you've really just got to like feel into your own experience, I guess, and see what's coming up and deal with it as you see it, even if it's horrifying or sad.
This is why trust for me, some people call that faith, because faith is like trust but not knowing where you're going with it all, is one of the most important words. Patience and trust for me.
Yeah. Do you think the how like what's your sense, like people talk about intuition a lot, and I've been going through this thing like where I'm like I tend to be really mental, but I've been going through a thing in the last 6 months or so where I'm just trying to like trust, have faith and stuff, where it's like there's situations like, you know, like there's no way it's going to work out, you know. There's just no way. And then I'm like, dude, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to make a decision. And it's specifically like I'm involved in a new relationship after the divorce last year, whenever it was, and you know, I mean, I've been out of work for 4 months. This new girl is from a very, she's like a very rich girl, like genius, intelligence, and she's spiritual too. And it's like I keep thinking to myself, dude, there's no way this is going to work out. Like, because, you know, like, she got high expectations. Like, I'm not working. I'm like, dude, it's just not going to happen. And so every month, I'm like, okay, this is the month it's going to break up, because there's no way I can. And then it's like, then I say to myself, no, you know what? I'm just going to believe. I'm just going to believe it's all cool. And then it's still going 6 months later. I'm like, wow. So this is the month it's not going to work out, clearly, but who knows? But it's
well, you know, both belief and the mind, the deciding how it's going to go. The belief is another deciding how it's going to go. Exactly. Intuition speaks to something else to me, and this speaks to listening to life, not having any idea of life. Can you take your hands off the idea of life? Yeah. The mind wants to put the mind is a beautiful tool. And that tool is the tool of discrimination, like differentiation. It can go, this goes in this box, this goes in this box, this goes in this box, right? That is the beautiful tool of the mind. 2 + 2 = 4. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But now you're trying to apply the mind to life. Now, life isn't about boxes and definition and certainties. Life is the complete jack opposite of that.
Yeah.
So you're trying to parse the life experience through the tool of the mind. It doesn't work.
And that's what you
so even believing that it's going to work or believing it's not going to work is still doing that. Better, if you can, this is my advice, is to stay in the unknowingness.
Exactly.
When you stay in the unknowingness, now here's the problem with that. Our human minds have been trained to be the king of the world. And so there's terror that comes when you drop into that unknowingness. But the more you're able to drop into that unknowingness, you will see that actually there's great trust and great wisdom in that unknowingness. Now, what you have to do in order to get into that unknowingness is you have to let go of the mind's determinations of how things are going to go.
Yeah.
The thing is, it doesn't know how things are going to go anyway.
Right. It's a complete waste
but it thinks it
of time. This
is
what the last 6 months.
It basically causes you suffer.
Yeah. Well, actually, the last 6 months have been good because I've been trying to disconnect from it, and like things are just working by themselves. It doesn't need my interruption.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
It
And
doesn't.
it's not
Sure.
about so the sort of law of attraction style teachings don't go far enough. Things, oh, you just, it's like you're just trying to switch out one style of thinking for a better style of thinking. Actually, we've got to drop all styles of thinking. We've got to drop all ideas of how this life is going to go, and then we get to enjoy what is life. We don't have, okay, if you don't think I need to get towards this orange, you're open to all of the fruits that are in life all of a sudden. And you,
Right.
you find yourself with an apple in your lap, you're like, great, there's an apple here. But if you
Exactly.
are set on an orange, everything else is like you're not open to anything. You're just like, right, orange, that's it. And all these other
Yeah.
things are coming at you, and you're basically you're turning away from life at that point in favor of what you think you want. You're turning towards an image of life rather than life itself.
That's good. It's a good teaching. That's good. You're a fine teacher, right?
Just describing life how I see it. That's it. That's all. There's no magic juice here.
Man, that's good.
Yeah. It's a sacrifice, though. You have to sacrifice your knowing for your unknowing, and the unknowing is really quite beautiful. But you sometimes you have to do it bit by bit, because there's such tight grip on knowingness, and our sense of, like, we're taught that we have to know, we have to be someone, we have to have knowledge, we have to, define ourselves. But actually, what we are isn't those definitions. Those are our images of ourselves, and the images that people project on us.
Yeah.
And they become a cage, actually.
Yeah. Can Will it be possible to do some kind of little transmission here, or
Oh
no?
yes, oh yes. I always do a transmission at the end of my sessions. Yep, yep.
Right.
Don't worry, we'll get to that. Don't worry. Are you
Okay.
feeling like we're in a good place to wrap up this session today? Then no other questions or things that you want to talk about coming up for you?
No, I mean that's it. I mean, I just it's interesting just bouncing ideas off you. I mean, I've studied a lot. I've got a pretty good idea of stuff, but then like your modality of transmission is something I don't really know how that works. I mean, I've got ideas about how to do that, and like people ask me to do transmissions with them. I'm like, listen, I don't do transmissions, but people feel energy sometimes from me, just because like if I'm talking like in depth with people, and I can feel it coming
Mhm.
up. And so
Well, I think we are all transmitting.
yeah,
What we're transmitting is another question, but we are all actually, that is how we communicate. I'd say beyond the words, we're transmitting that, we're connecting. That energy is unfolding within us. It doesn't stop at the barrier of the body, the physical body.
yeah,
I don't
right.
think it stops anywhere. I think it intensifies, but it's yeah, it's the same energy everywhere. Um, so yeah, we're all transmitting. But if you're not clear in yourself about who and what you are, and who and what is transmitting,
Right. That's the
um,
thing, right?
it gets muddy.
Yeah.
And that's why you get some people who are having Kundalini awakenings and they're transmitting energy, but it's still parsed through the mind, body, and the delusions of that, the non-clarity of that.
What's your take on divinity as such? Is that part of the contents?
We're we're the no, I would say the divinity is the substrate. I would describe
Okay.
divinity as the substrate, and the
Which,
contents is the humanness, the human experience. That's
yeah,
why I think this is all divinity. Actually, it's all, everything
yeah.
is divine. um it's the yeah it's everything. It is that. We are that. That's what I would say.
That's the crazy thing about it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying to me, well, like God, God's, there's probably a God, but he's not actually involved in their everyday activities. I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like,
It's
it's
like,
it's complete involvement at molecular level. It's like
well, it would be the better question for me when someone says, what is God? I'm like, well, what isn't God? Point to me what
yeah,
isn't God, and then we can talk. Because
exactly
then
right.
you're creating a separation, then you're creating a duality. The non-duality is the recognition of that. People will use the word God and they think they conceive of it in such a human small way, as in God is a thing, an object, it's just a
Yeah,
bigger object, just a more, vast or cosmic object, right? But
right.
actually, it, to me, God, and I use Divine Mother, but it's just the same
Yeah,
thing. It's pointing to the substrate, the substratum of life that gives rise to all of life. Now, I am Divine Mother, you are Divine Mother in form. It's like, the way I would describe it is like the sun. You have a sun ray that hits something, and that the sun? Well, yes and no. It's part of the sun. The sun ray hitting an object is part of the sun. So it's
yep,
not separate from the sun, but it's not the whole of the sun. So the divine or the God or whatever is like talking of the whole sun. And
yep.
then the human is the sun ray, the form of the sun.
Do you have a favorite form of the Divine Mother which you venerate, or no?
It doesn't have a form for me, but it has a taste. The transmission that I give has the taste of like Mother Mary. Actually, I'm not Christian, but that's
Yeah, that's
that it has
amazing. It's
that it
amazing you
has.
said that. Sorry to interrupt you, but like
No,
the last time I was having a chat on Messenger with Chris Mitchell, and that was the download. We were just sitting, we're talking about something completely different, and all of a sudden I get this boom: Mother Mary is Shakti, and Jesus Christ is Kundalini, and it was so jaw dropping I couldn't breathe because sometimes you get these transmissions, they're so huge,
mm-hmm.
and it was scary just because it was like it was beyond the mind's ability to understand it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting, dude. It's amazing you said that. Okay.
Yeah, for me, and I think it's to do with this particular form of embodiment. This human form has got that flavor of it as well, that sort of, that all-encompassing love and compassion and care is what I was sort of born with, let's say, in the human form. So it makes sense that that is the opposite of that is the divine mother in Mary form.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me. I didn't choose it. It's not like I went out there. In fact, when I was taught to give transmission, the divine mother was Kali Ma, and I couldn't. It wasn't it for me. That energy was so alien, so sort of, it wasn't what life was calling for me. And every time this divine mother Mary used to come in, this energy, again, it's not so formless for me. It's not so formed for me. It's too big to put into a form, put it to
Yeah.
say.
Sure.
But I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. I'm like, kept having this feeling of like, I got to come back to Kali Ma. I got to come back to Kali Ma. And it's like life has such a bigger intelligence than we as the human can possibly fathom.
That's so
So
funny, man. That's funny. I got to go back. I know that feeling, man. It's funny. This happens to me. Like I'll be invoking like Lakshmi, but then your mind goes somewhere else. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. What am I
that's,
doing?
yeah.
You're like,
And it's
oh,
not to say that sometimes a different form of energy comes when I'm with someone, and it's again the intelligence of life. I like, for me, it's a very hands-off process,
yeah,
because if I put my hands on it, it's a human hands putting on something, and that's not the way it works. And
yep,
so sometimes a different energy does come in, and often sometimes different colors come in as well, and there's all sorts of stuff that goes on. But it really, none of this stuff actually matters. What matters is the trust that we all get what we need.
yeah. Well, that's cool. Funny, interesting chat, Imogen.
So the transmission I do, the individual transmission, generally lasts about 25 minutes or so. Don't
Okay,
worry about the time.
okay,
And I think we won't speak afterwards.
okay.
I recommend taking rest afterwards, but you do what feels right for you. Um,
Let's just,
I noticed, I have a question for you actually. I
yeah.
noticed in the transmission, you have your eyes open a lot. What did you notice the difference between having your eyes and closed, eyes open and closed? Did you notice the difference?
Um, well, when I meditate, my eyes are always closed, but I think what was funny is I was already getting this huge blast of energy.
Hmm.
And I was like, and my mind was kind of scattered and stuff. And so I was just trying to, yeah. So I just kept my eyes open, and it didn't really seem to make a difference. I
Yeah,
did find it's not quite true. I did notice that obviously when I close my eyes, I get into a more meditative state. So I may do that
yeah.
now. I was also trying to sort of watch how you did it. Like I was trying to observe. There was some observation going on
Yeah.
there, but
Because
clearly that's not going into the inside, right?
no,
So
because what I noticed during the retreat, actually, I felt like your energy was staying quite on the surface level of your mind quite a lot during the transmissions.
okay.
That you weren't, there wasn't a settling into the body, which it can be helpful, I
Yeah, I
would
mean that's
say.
cool. I mean that's some good guidance there. Like typically when I'm meditating, I meditate. I usually what I do is I start meditating on my body, then I
Hmm.
move into the imagination, then I move into
Hmm.
I go through the elements, the elemental, then I move into
Hmm. Hmm.
spirit, and depending. I mean, I can just sit in the body and just feel energy in the body, and it's
Hmm.
completely awesome. So I
Hmm.
can do that.
What I recommend to people is to sit in the non-conceptual awareness if you can. Like most people only know how to get to the body stage.
Yep.
But if you have experience with this, what I would recommend for you, what we talked about awareness there,
Yeah.
that is what I'm talking about, is like to stay in
Because
the non-conceptual, to stay in the awareness of awareness, to stay in the awareness of the body, to stay in the awareness of the spirit even.
yeah.
You can like have your loyalty be to that, and then whatever content arises, whether it's spiritual, astral, whatever, it doesn't actually matter at that point,
Yeah.
even mind. So there's no problem with the mind being there. If you're seated in awareness,
Yeah.
you can have your eyes open and your mind going like the clappers, but you're still seated and rested in that awareness.
Yep.
So that's what I would recommend, is to just, and if you can't get there, stay with the body first.
Okay. I can do
And
non-concept.
I eyes open, closed. I mean, for me, it makes no difference, and I don't mind. Like I say to people, to find out what if their eyes open helps them to stay out of the mind more, great. If their eyes closed helps them to stay out of the mind more, close them.
Yeah,
So
I'll close them now. I mean, I really just want to like try and like just like the most like I think is obviously is more efficient if there's no visual input. So yeah, let's do
yeah,
that.
that's it. That's what it is. The
And I'm in the
visual
state.
stuff, people can't get beyond that often.
Yeah,
It's so
I'll
strong
just
in us.
go into non-conceptual space and try and sit in that while we do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and just use that little technique of notice and return. So if you do notice yourself coming back out into the mind,
Yeah.
just return back into that non-conceptual awareness. That I call it open awareness. It's because there's an openness there. There's a non-binding, a non-clinging.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, cool. Let's do this. Lovely to talk to you today.
Nice, Imogen.
And
Thanks.
you know where I am if you want to meet again.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.